Shout out to the Divi Project. That's diviproject.org for your one-click masternode and staking solutions. Also, monarchtoken.io. Thank you, monarchtoken.io, for sponsoring the podcast. A complete crypto solution available for Android, iOS, and desktop today. Nothing like shilling in the morning. Hey, how goes it? Ken Bozak here to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessories. And today I'm with my bro Blaise Pepitone. How goes it, bro?
I'm good, man. How you living?
I'm enjoying the day, bro. Just enjoying the day. So you're here from amerixenergy.com, is that correct?
Yep, MRX Energy Services. Yep, we are a energy consulting firm, both on the wholesale and the retail side. So we basically um, help and assist and represent mining companies to purchase electricity and natural gas. So
I didn't.
basically, um, you know, for lack of a better term, they're just engaging with us because we know how to purchase it, we know where to purchase it, it meaning electricity, and we just simply allow them to take advantage of a tremendous amount of leverage in the market. So,
I didn't even know you could get like wholesale supply of electricity or whatever. It's I guess because I lived a residential life, but I never thought of getting it at
sir,
wholesale.
yeah, I mean, you think about like manufacturers or guys like Google, Facebook. I mean, anybody that needs to operate their business with electricity, and if they need a tremendous amount of it, you know, folks that have a lot of electricity demand could have the ability to purchase it in a wholesale way, which is
It,
similar to like a bank or a supplier. They purchase it in a wholesale fashion. So.
so are they able to sell like excess? Like if a business like Google
Mhm.
buys electricity in wholesale and they have extra electricity that they're not really using, can they like sublet
Mhm.
or whatever like that electricity?
Yeah, I mean they wouldn't turn into like a reseller, but they would basically just sell it back, or just there's a way to basically account for excess electricity. Somebody will offtake it somewhere, and there's a price to correlate with that transaction. So, in theory, yes, but it's a very complicated and kind of ridiculous conversation for this purpose.
I want to get into the ridiculousness of this
All right.
type of conversation only because like I knew of like energy programs and like these like door to door electrical
Yeah.
like salesmen, but there's a lot of like
Yep.
Ponzi schemes or just straight up scams in general. Like, what sets this aside from some of those other ones people may have heard of? When the guy just
Mhm.
knocks at the door and he's like, "Hey, I can save you money on your electricity," and ends up costing people more than what they used to pay.
Yeah. So, um, and mind you, obviously, this keeping it, Bitcoin related. Anybody mining for Bitcoin, electricity needs to be your number one focus. Obviously, Bitcoin being, the focus, but electricity needs to be controlled. It's your number one cost, right? So here we go. We are uh, actually you and I. Well, you're from the great state of the first state,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? I'm from South Jersey, so I'm not far from you. And so Pennsylvania was one of the first states to open the market, right? It's basically deregulation, or they basically, the state allowed um, companies to come in and purchase the electricity that the electrons that are traveling over the lines, right, to get to you and I's home and business. They allowed companies to come in and purchase that in the form of a commodity, or it became, essentially a commoditized business. And you and I can purchase that for our home. You can purchase it. You no longer have to purchase it from one source. You have the option as a resident in the state of Pennsylvania and all of the states that have passed legislation to deregulate uh, electricity and natural gas, right?
Yeah, they had a monopoly on that for ever.
Yeah, they so basically where electricity came from who you bought it, how much it cost, and what fuel was used to make it. It all came from one source for hundreds of years. So you're absolutely right.
Hey,
So,
thanks for the super chat, Big Crypto Dave. Much appreciated, bro. Much appreciated.
nice. And so, basically, they opened the markets up. 99, Pennsylvania got deregulated. Uh, Prince was prophesying a little bit in his song, and or at least in my industry. So he basically, they allowed the markets to be open, and then they allowed companies like, Direct Energy and Constellation and these types of retail energy suppliers, we call them, to, purchase wholesale electricity on an exchange, okay, and then sell it retail to clients. Now, obviously, think about 1999. So think of a 20-year-old business, okay, not very old in the grand scheme of a 200 to 300-year-old. I mean, you're talking Thomas Edison, right? Utility type of mindset where you control the market. Now all of a sudden the market's open. So of course you got it's just like Bitcoin, right? You got everybody in the mix trying to make money off of this incredible opportunity, right?
Do you see like this is basically like trading assets, buy low, sell high? Like when the electrical market cost more to produce, people are selling the electricity that they bought at a lower price at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about this. So, electricity so there's different there's different grids, right? And you and I live in the largest grid in the U.S., which is called PJM. It encompasses 13, I believe, 13 states, including D.C.
Oh wow.
And so it is the largest electrical region. They call them RTOs, regional transmission operator, in the U.S. And because it has Philly, Chicago, Cleveland, massive cities it encompasses. And so it's the Magellan of the electricity world, right? It tells when electricity is made, the grid puts it where it needs to go, right? Electricity has in this market we sit in, has remained flat for 15 years, and that's straight from their CEO's mouth. And so uh, electricity is very cheap, and it's going to be cheap because Pennsylvania and West Virginia, where shale natural gas is robust, it is the second largest natural gas producing state in the country, Pennsylvania. So, with all of the natural gas, uh, natural gas is a fossil fuel. It's turned into electricity through a generating process. And so once it's turned into electricity, because it's a simple supply demand economics, there's so much natural gas up in this area, electricity will remain cheap because of the supply. There's just so much supply. So people aren't necessarily selling electricity at a high price right now. In the retail market, it's just how much electricity can I get for how long, because we know it's so cheap.
Well,
And
DJ Meat Popsicle in the chat brought up an interesting, and this is sort of where I was kind of leading towards what my last statement was. Wouldn't it be cheaper just to get it from that one direct source rather than having people buy it? And I mean, you have to sell it at a price higher than you
right.
purchased it to make a profit. So DJ Meat Popsicle says Direct Energy was buying bulk rates from the producers, then selling it back to us at a higher rate than we could have gotten from the producer. And I feel like, when I look at the market and the way energy is being, distributed now, like you said, for the past 20 years, it seems that we are seeing an increase in the cost of electricity, even though it is cheap to produce now because of the competition in the market, where it used to just be from the producer itself.
So you see a lot of that stuff on the residential side, right?
Yeah, I
And
mean, that's where
residential,
I live.
yeah, and that's okay. I mean, residential market pricing is totally different from a commercial industrial pricing model. So that person actually is correct. In some parts of the country, you'll see suppliers, okay, um, charging pricing or pricing. So let's just keep it in Pennsylvania. It's a great example. You can go to Pennsylvania, go to papowerswitch.com. You can look at hundreds of supplier offers, right? In any part of the state, you can pick. You live in Philadelphia, so you have Pico as your
Yeah.
electric distribution company. Pico in the state of Pennsylvania, Pico has the responsibility of delivering you the power or the electricity, but they also have they can have the responsibility, if you choose to do so. They can have the responsibility of supplying you the electricity. It just so happens that you have the opportunity to shop, right? In the residential market, that person is absolutely right. We've seen in Pennsylvania, even specifically, that residential clients are paying more for electricity supply than the utility is charging. Um, it's just the conversation gets so convoluted, Ken, and then there's simply, it's just like trying to explaining an 80-year-old how Bitcoin works, and how, seriously, I mean, it really is a very long process. And if you had an additional hour for the podcast, I can tell you exactly how to shop for electricity at your house, and you would save money every single month for the duration of that contract, right?
See, I totally believe this because I had a friend of mine who did this, but it was more so for the industrial, not so much residential. He would go to a lot
Yeah,
of these businesses, and mostly it was like very small mom and pop shop franchises that were just starting to franchise out.
yeah,
And he would hook them up with deals with their electricity for multiple businesses. And because they had multiple businesses basically buying from the same supplier, it was a lot cheaper. It's like going to, BJ's and buying shrimp in bulk rather than buying it individually.
that's
It's,
right.
it's going to
That's right.
cost industrial a lot less because they are purchasing
Yeah,
a lot more. Like DJ Me Popsicle said, they use more, so we make more. That's the argument of the suppliers, and that is true, and that's business
right.
101. But
Yep.
is this sustainable for residential when it comes to like things like Bitcoin mining, where it's possible that we're going to see residential consumption of electricity increase more and more and more, as we have seen with electronics being introduced from like the fucking. I
Sure.
remember early on my grandma would freak out about like the washer machine and the refrigerator and shit because like it ate
Yeah.
up so much electricity that like she just wasn't used to seeing that amount of electricity on her bill. And now we have
Hmm.
these, desktop computers, gaming consoles, smart devices that are plugged in. Like now we're going to be introducing basically like residential mining. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on the potential of seeing residential get to that point of where it may all look like,
Sure.
industrial, like me and my neighbors and my neighbors and my neighbors basically get one bulk package together, right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And so that's that's funny. So let me just speak to one thing on the industrial side, or the commercial industrial side in the market, specifically in our region, PJM, which is those 13 states plus DC market that I was telling you about. Um, we have seen suppliers, retail energy suppliers, come in with pricing models that literally are the cheapest we've ever seen in a very long time. I would say double digit years, right? And so the commodity itself has become so inexpensive, and it's just so competitive. It truly is the fact. And we have, we represent my portfolio and my firm's, clients. We represent some very well established businesses in the marketplace. And right now, I'd say for the last since 2016, it was a great time to be buying. If you had a very substantial business, that you need electricity, a lot of electricity, natural gas, it was a great time to be in the market. It still is to this very day. So just saying that, but back to your whole residential consumption side and demand, I do see that. I don't study the residential market, but enough to speak to this next point.
We'll consider it
Um,
speculation.
sure, yeah. So I I'll just keep it for myself, right? So I mean, I have some mining equipment at my house, right? And my just natural consumption increased, right? Because it's a lot of, it's more demand that I've had. And I'd say if it's from a transition, if we're transitioning more into the technology side and we're relying more on electricity, uh, kind of intensive uh, materials like phones and computers and other stuff like that. If we're relying on that, then obviously, the demand will increase. I personally increased my residential electricity demand because I mine for cryptocurrency.
Do you think
And
industrial will
so,
get into that? Is that like something a company like yours could incentivize and
right.
pitch? Because when you walk into an
Okay.
industrial organization and they're purchasing electricity, and you can see that maybe they have some runoff at the end of the month that they're selling back that they could have used to mine some kind of crypto like Bitcoin or even a GPU mineable asset. Oh,
Right.
and
And
big
so,
shout
well,
out
let
to
me,
Bitcoin Jake for the 420 super chat. I'm gonna hit the 3 foot bong in his honor. This little guy right
um,
here.
so let me just say something in correction. So a customer, um, there's a specific way a customer can technically sell back to any grid, and it's quite complicated. Most 90% of the commercial industrial clients aren't able to sell back to a grid unless they have specific electrical infrastructure in place,
Mm.
or a contract that can reflect that.
Right, because it would just
Um,
burn off. It wouldn't just go back to the power line. It doesn't just reverse like that.
well, we'll take it all the way back to, what is this, like conservation 101 or physics 101? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? So electricity, once it's made, it needs to be consumed. There's no, uh, well, there was a massive battery. Mr. Tesla made a huge battery in Australia that powered 1.5 million homes, which was very interesting. But there is no mega battery to store electricity, so there's no robust way to do that. And thus, when you make electricity, it needs to be consumed, right? Anyway, um, so I represent, when I saw you in Vegas, I was there to present and speak to a number of mining companies, and I represent 10 of them, and some of them in the space that are absolutely killing it because they recognize that electricity purchasing, or the economical way to purchase electricity in the US, if you're a miner, is extraordinarily important, and it's extraordinarily complex. Therefore, I base a lot of my, like, I don't really sell people anything. You know what I mean? I just give them straight education, facts, trust and verify, don't trust but verify information, that's going to give them the best transparent market view price on electricity, right? Because again, these miners are entering into this highly volatile, market. I mean, for you and me, I'm super bullish, so it's not really volatile in my opinion.
Right.
But you know, to an investor or to a business, that's surrounding their business model on the volatility of Bitcoin's price in the market, and the cost to a miner of electricity becomes ridiculously important. And there's other associated things like liquid cooling. Shout out to one of my partners, in Texas, Immersion Systems. They're crushing it. So you can cool the machines. There's efficiencies that you can do to where Bitcoin can go to $2,000. You can still have a profitable, quote unquote, business in the mining
Yeah, I
world
was going to get into that.
because, yeah. So like, you can control your costs so hardcore that the volatility doesn't matter. And that's why the guys that are killing it in the mining game are partnered with us, or with me, the energy guru, to get them, the best price possible in North America. So,
So what is the profitability of mining a Bitcoin in North America? Do you know like any of the more profitable areas?
yeah. So there are, okay. So I'll speak from just electricity. cost, right?
Yeah.
So let's rephrase your question to say, where is the cheapest electricity, right? And for me to get super granular, you're going to need to hit me up on Twitter to engage with me, right? But because that's somewhat of the secret sauce, but I can tell you that our firm has identified, um, significant areas in the US and Canada where you could purchase very cheap electricity. And I'll just give you some free secret sauce is that you're sitting in one of the states that we've identified as the cheapest electricity.
I've
Actually, we both are.
I've
And
noticed that.
so,
Yeah, I've noticed that
yeah,
this is really cheap for electricity in the tri-state area right now.
yeah, talk to any of those guys out in Vegas or California and just ask them, hey, what do you pay? What do you pay for your price for electricity at your house, right? And they'll tell you, double digits minimum. Like let's just say super conservative. I pay 10 cents, you know, um, for supply. Okay, because there's two parts. You have supply, you have delivery. What's your supply price? Okay, like now supply meaning the electrons that are coming into your computer, right, and through your ears and your headphones, right? Those electrons cost 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, here in residential Pennsylvania, PICO and PPL, residential supply costs average is like 7 cents. So right there, you have a 30, what is that, uh, 25, 30%, roughly
Hmm.
about that savings right off the top. And that's not including on the delivery side, which is kind of, that's still the regulated portion of that price. That's non-negotiable. That's what the utilities are charging you to deliver the electrons to you. And so, that's its own charge. But I unfortunately, it's think of that as like an actual like old school like tariff. Like you can't change this.
And delivery,
Um,
I assume would have to do with like the infrastructure and stuff, right?
yeah, sure. So that's like the wires, the maintenance of the wires, basically ensuring that you have, you know, um, the appropriate electricity needed for your house. And if you need, or your home or your business or your, whatever, your mining facility. And if you need additional, right, capacity, we call it, um, that you're accommodated, and that you're uh, sought after, not sought after, but sought to. Like your requests are, you know, made accurately, and they're done, whatever, in a quote timely fashion. But unfortunately, utilities have their own way of they have their own time schedule. So I'll just leave it like that. But yeah, so
Oh,
obviously
Big
we all
Crypto
pray for that.
Dave, he has a really interesting comment, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. There was a video
Yeah,
on YouTube that shows you how to DIY Tesla Powerwall battery packs from 18650 lithium batteries. He says, with time and money, anybody can create net zero farm. All right, so that is like tinfoil hatty shit, I get, but like,
yep,
what are your thoughts though on like other or even this kind of method, whatever, of self
sure,
providing energy? Like we have solar
yeah,
panels becoming like super popular, and Elon Musk
hmm
Tesla's wall battery is like fucking revolutionary. Like you said, there was never a battery that could just hold that much electricity to provide a house with resource, but now we
yeah,
do. So do you think that there is, this could create more of a competitive market for the distributors to the client side? Like, do these big power companies finally have to like negotiate with individuals? Because I could have a couple of solar panels and I could be providing
sure,
electricity to my neighbors, and basically I
yep,
wouldn't charge them anything. We could just go halves on whatever it costs to maintenance it.
yeah. So okay, so at my firm and my own general um, interest, I have a renewable focus. So I'm all about solar, wind,
Respect.
uh, renewable resources. Um, Although nuclear power is not a renewable resource, I am a nuclear I like nuclear power. I'm like in the middle with them just because I do love the fact that it's zero carbon free. You know, it's a carbon free fuel, and so although not renewable, you know, I love
Well,
less
there's no carbon
pollution.
emission, but there is still pollution. It's just a different type and
Indeed.
more containable, I would say.
Yeah. So let me just rephrase and say I don't I if it's zero carbon emission and it's renewable, I'm all about it, right? And so, but I'm also most economical, right? So I'm a finance guy, I'm a numbers guy, so that's what I'm going to look at kind of almost first before anything else. And what you're describing, and what that the gentleman described was something that is going to require. I do believe that we are in one of the greatest energy transitions that we'll ever see, but I don't think that. I think we're in the middle of it. And Dr. Richard Rhodes wrote a really good book entitled Energy, and he describes energy transitions taking roughly about 100 years. You know, and we're talking all the way from 1600s to Elizabethan wood burning energy, you know, burning wood to create energy, to all the way till now. But I think we're in the middle of it. I don't honestly think that we'll see it. We may see it when we're 65, 70, where renewable applications and battery storage and technology, and perhaps even another type of fuel is introduced that's carbon free. You know, like this gentleman's mentioning, you know, any fuel that's going to allow you to create a zero emission or a net zero type of feel. What people really forget is it creates, in order to do these things, it is a tremendous amount of infrastructure upgrades and a
Yep.
tremendous amount of capital, you know, to become, you know, like here's a great example. You know, the boroughs, the 5 boroughs in New York just passed some legislation. I can't remember when it was. It was definitely this year, that they are to reduce their carbon emit or their carbon footprint by 60%.
Yeah, it has to be over
Okay.
50%, man, or else it's not enough. Yeah.
Right. And you get fined. So you just imagine like a New York City 5 borough fine if you're not in
I would love to see
compliance
what
with
they
that.
do with that fine too. Like they're gonna spend that on it, cleaning up the mess that they're charging the fine for. You know what I mean? It's like a littering fine.
Yeah.
Do they even use
Oh,
that
it's
money to
it's a
help clean
game.
the streets? Like, what the fuck's the point of the fine?
Well, think about all these. So here's another sidebar comment. You can have a whole podcast on this about carbon tax, you know, and that whole
Oh, it's a scam.
legis.
Well,
So
DJ
we'll
Me
just leave it at
Popsicle just
that.
brought up one of the biggest scam legislations I've ever heard of, and I've seen this before, DJ. So
Yeah,
you're not wrong. A lot of
yeah,
places do legislate that you're not allowed. You cannot be your own power producer. It is
right.
illegal to
See,
tap off of the
yeah,
grid. You could actually have your house condemned for unsuitable living conditions and legally evicted from your property because you disconnected your house from the power lines. Like they'll
yeah.
make you
See, and
fucking
that's
homeless.
that whole monopolization we were talking about, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what we're
So
looking at is disrupting the energy industry by people
right.
doing it anyway. Like prohibition of
Yeah.
energy, prohibition of alcohol.
Well, think
People will be moonshining energy with these solar panels and underground railroad style sending it to their
and mining
neighbors.
Bitcoin and
Yup.
mining Bitcoin.
Facts, bro. Everybody's underground pool is going to be mining Bitcoin like they were growing weed back in the 60s and 70s. They're going to be mining Bitcoin in these underground pools. You'll see the blue tarp over it all summer. I
I'm
wonder
telling you,
why.
man. Yeah, liquid. Yeah, liquid immersion there, man,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Liquid cooled mining pools. Dude, that's so
No, but
punny. It's
think about
insane.
it. But think about it, right? So like, you know, the grids. Okay, so you know the grid in which, you know, I always my and I don't really care if this is a bad way to describe it, but I always describe it as a Magellan, right? It's driving electricity to the appropriated demand points, right? Okay, and so that system was designed, man, like Thomas Edison created the original foundation for like an actual distribution network, right? So when we start integrating all of this technology with renewables, and like, so renewables are variable generation, right? So especially here in Pennsylvania, there is crappy solar and crappy wind, right? The wind doesn't blow tremendous like it does in the middle of Iowa where there's no trees for a mile. Like I don't know if there might not be a tree for 100 miles or something. I don't know. I'm just like, it's quite possible. But anyway, so the wind blows a lot there. It doesn't blow a lot here. So the renewable aspect becomes interesting to integrate into a grid system that has been developed like decades ago, right? So the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow all the time. So now you have to like schedule this renewable variable electric generation into a grid system that's like, whoa, what's this? I don't know how to do this. Who needs this? What? When? I can't forecast. Help. So that's why you have these nuclear plants, because it's like, okay, nuclear is just on and it produces X amount of electricity and it's on, it's never going to shut off. Same thing with coal, same thing with natural gas, right? These things are called base load generation. It's the fuel that's really good for base load. Because again, if you say I want 100% wind power or 100% solar power, think about it. Do we live in an area where the sun is shining all the time?
Right. No.
So what's the solution? We have to have some type of storage because we need electricity when we go to sleep. Okay, so do we have a battery or some type of
Getting
system?
close.
Right? So here we go. We start having that conversation of like, do we have a battery that can support a lot of demand or little demand, right? That can do that. And that is I couldn't have said it better myself. We are getting close. That getting close line could be another 30 years. I don't know. I'm not super in the battery. I'm an energy financial advisor. I'm not an engineer. Never will claim to be. I'm a financial engineer. I don't need a degree to be a financial engineer, right? So, but I will say that the innovation in a lot of the different energy spaces is becoming absolutely phenomenal, brilliant. It reminds me some of the same innovation and technology and some of the stuff we're seeing in the crypto space right now, especially, when you or I were in San Francisco, earlier this year. I mean, some of the stuff surrounding that, and you've been in the space a lot longer than me. I've only been in since 2015.
Yeah, but you've been to a lot of I've seen you at enough conferences to know you know your
Yeah, I
shit.
mean, well, I should have came up and introduced myself to you in San Francisco, but it's okay. We're here now. So I was there, Bitcoin 2020 or Bitcoin 2019. I was in Miami Mining Disrupt. You and I just came back from WCC.
And they had their own mining room, bro. Like that was it. I'd
Right. So
never seen
that's what we
anything
were.
like that before.
Yeah. So our company, partnered with our clients, Forgex, and we got a booth
Did you see that giant
there.
miner thing that looked like a torpedo? It was in the very back against the wall. It was a long
Oh yes,
torpedo
yes. So
look. It looked like a fucking missile of Bitcoin miners, dude.
yeah. So those guys were the cooling guys.
Yeah, dude. I was
So
talking to them. They're gangsters, man. They were doing some gangster stuff.
they got a really interesting story. Like the guy's business. Like think of how weird this is, man. I would never like this is like in the filing cabinet in the way back of my brain. Like would never ever pull this out. We just happened to create a liquid cooling company because we found that the solution that we used to cool batteries with works just as good, if not better. And we tweaked this solution to work with these mining machines. And I'm just like, what do you just come up with this stuff? I mean, I don't know, man.
Well,
It's
that's
so
the
cool.
box they live in, right? When they're like cooling
Yeah,
these batteries, that's their whole thought process. Like we think about crypto, I think about Bitcoin a lot. You probably think about energy a lot because these are the boxes we kind of put ourselves in. And
Sure.
those liquid
Well, I
cooling
think about
guys,
both of
like
the boxes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so I go to these like, and so what hit it for me was when I went to San Francisco, because I was always fascinated with. So this is my small caveat of how I got into the space. Like I loved Bitcoin, was fascinated. I've always been a somewhat of a techie, but never like one to like. I was never gonna build a computer or anything like that. Never. I was big into video games, but I heard about Bitcoin. It was kind of always intrigued me, but never really thought about it until I started to look at trading Bitcoin, like somewhat of a day trader and whatnot. And then, so I started to understand it more and more and more. That was like 2017. And then basically what happened for me was, our firm decided to go after two spaces, either the cryptocurrency space or kind of blockchain data center space or medical marijuana. So I was like,
It's cannabis. Marijuana's racist.
uh,
I know it's not you. It's the mainstream. I'm
man,
sorry.
you
As soon
just
as
hit
I
me.
hear the word marijuana, bro, I'm just like, no. We have to call it cannabis.
Got it. That's awesome.
Some of the stoners might know what I'm talking about. Other people might just think I'm too high.
No, it's all right. Anyway, so I said, let's just go into, because I was more passionate about the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency space. So I went into there and they said, all right, let's find somewhere where you can get plugged in. And I just happened to stumble on, Bitcoin 2019, completely random. Went out there, and the biggest goal for me when I was out there was I said, I want to understand Bitcoin fundamentally. I said, I want to know everything I can about it. I want to read Satoshi's white paper. I'm a sponge, dude. Just tell me everything I can understand about it. And I got that and more from that conference, just as a complete, like, dude, okay, so I just created a Twitter account at that conference. Okay. So like,
What's your Twitter
I
account
live
so
under,
people can follow you, Guru?
yes. So it's at the Energy Guru 7. So that the Energy Guru GURU 7, and you'll find me. And thank you for that. Anyway, so yeah, I like, they're like, you don't have a Twitter account? I was like, no, dude, I never use Twitter. They're like, okay, get a Twitter account, go get this cold storage. So like I had guys coming in and like really taking me under my wing. Freaking Bitcoin newbie baby duck, dude. I'm talking like baby duck. And so, and honestly, I saw you. I was like, wow, that dude's got a skirt on. Like he must, you know, obviously, he doesn't give a mother fart about anything. So he's, and they're like, oh yeah, he's an OG. So I was like, okay, cool. At some point, we need to connect. But I wasn't ready for that, right? Because again, I was a newbie, right? I had no, like, me talking to you would be just some random guy from Pennsylvania, like, oh, that's cool. What are you doing here? You really need to get your shit together because
You're wearing a dress.
right. So, all right. So then now fast forward to, Vegas 3 weeks ago. And now, I have 10 highly sophisticated cryptocurrency miners that I represent that are looking at doing, heavy duty mining operations, like so heavy duty that, to put it in kindergarten terms, they're building an operation the size of a coal fired electricity generation plant, like the same exact bandwidth of that. They're trying to build that and more just to mine cryptocurrency. Like, and that, get this, that's like some of these companies, that's 10% of their portfolio. So they're in like augmented reality, artificial intelligence. These people are building robots. I mean, these things they're just some of the craziest, coolest things um, that you could ever think about. Like virtual reality stuff. Like I don't know if you got a chance, which is one of the really cool things at the conference, was the relaxing like goggles. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I didn't
so
get to
I'm like,
use them, but I saw people checking it out.
dude, like use them, right? I mean, this is just a stupid, cool, weird thing that like you put on this app. My kids are all about it. They're like, Dad, can I put that stuff on when I'm trying to go to sleep? Like, it's just cool stuff, you know? So, and that stuff I like, right? Leave all the drama stuff aside. And that's kind of how the run in happened with you and I, which was a whole nother interesting thing. Um, Bitcoin forever, that dude's a scam. Um, uh, anyway, that's what I was really in Vegas for, was to speak to the miners. I mean, we had, if we have the relationship, we do today, you would have been invited up to a very awesome meeting I had. We'll do one again next year, which you'll be invited to. But it was awesome. I mean, we had a market update. We had talked to significant mining operations about their plans and what do they feel about renewable energy, and because you see guys like there's companies that are doing mining operations that are powered 70% or 80% by solar power. I think
Mm.
that's awesome.
There's a lot of these
Okay.
companies trying to build infrastructure as close as I would say legally possible to the power producers. Because there's
Yeah,
a lot of
that's the
runoff
goal.
before it actually hits the actual power lines that distributes it.
Yep.
There's I think it's 20 to 30% of that power is actually used up. It doesn't go anywhere. So
Well,
you could just tap in the middle and you wouldn't even be noticed.
there you said about five things in one sentence. So let me let me unbundle those. So uh generally speaking, when electricity travels from one place to another, okay, there is some form of loss in the line. We call them line losses. It's just a uh, physics again. Heat is distributed from one point to another. The wire gets hot. When it's saying it's delivering X amount of electricity, it's really delivering Y
Right.
because there's some form of loss being enabled. What you just described, unfortunately, Ken, is somewhat inaccurate, and it's okay because I'll explain. Um, there, the guys, what you were correct in saying was that the guys that are trying to do it correctly in regards to mining operations are yes, trying to be very close to what's called a substation, which is the place where all of electricity comes from high voltage, gets into the substation to get stepped down into a voltage that's able to be received by the mining operation, right? So all
Okay.
of that power gets processed, or that electricity gets processed into a substation. Ideally, a mining facility would love to stick a primary voltage wire, boop, directly into that substation, and power their 10 megawatt facility, right? 10 megawatts in retrospect is about 87 million kilowatt hours a year. Um, it's
It's
that's the
about a city,
it's a
isn't
lot.
it?
Well, I mean, 87 million is like, oh boy, uh, it's about 800 Burger Kings, maybe.
That's see, you definitely see this in a whole different perspective than us.
I'm just trying to be super kindergarten, bro. I mean, super, 800 McDonald's, man. I mean, that's,
Well,
or
why don't these
let me,
power companies just mine
1600,
themselves? What?
excuse me, 1600, because one McDonald's is about 500,000 annual kilowatt hours. So call it 1400 approximated McDonald's. And so this is what the mining facilities are trying to do, right? 10 megawatts or more. Some are trying to do 100, 200 megawatts, massive facilities, right? So they would love to be close to that, but there's no electricity that's like lost that one can consume. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like there's a quantity that's delivered, man. These things, that's what I do. I mean, there's contracts that are stating
I think
Ken Bozak
what I meant was more
wants.
like there's no battery, right, that holds on to the power that isn't used at that
Oh,
substation, So
correct,
like that they might as
correct.
well be using this because there's so much runoff that isn't
Okay,
stored in a battery that we wouldn't even see a
yes.
difference really because of that. And I think that's sort of
Now,
I should have worded it
yes.
differently, but
Okay, now you're 98% there, right? Which is awesome. And so think about, let's bring back the substation, right? So you have the power that's generated, okay, in Pennsylvania. Let's keep it in Pennsylvania. You have a natural gas power plant that produces electricity. It gets delivered to through Pico's transmission lines, okay, and we want it to be delivered into a substation that will deliver 10 megawatts of electricity to Ken Bozak's mining company. Okay. In order to do that, right, um, a substation would need to be built in order to be able to hold, to not hold, because it's not a battery, but it's
convert.
able to convert. Yes, perfect. Convert high voltage line that's carrying 10 megawatts or more into a substation to step it down through a wire through primary voltage into transformer into the building, right? Or into the container, it could be. Okay. Again, disclaimer, I'm not an engineer. I could have missed some of those steps. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Anyway, so, okay. So, in order for so say if the substation's 100 megawatt capacity, okay, but Ken Bozak only wants 10 megawatts. Well, what happens to the other 90? Nothing. It sits there. Now, does it mean that there's an extra 90 megawatts of available for consumption? No. What it means is it can have the ability to have 90 megawatts pushed through that substation for a grand total of 100 total megawatts. But only when Ken Bozak calls the distributor, says, I want now 90 megawatts. Mr. Bozak, we need to make sure there's no line reinforcements, just work that needs to be done. If so, there needs to be that work done. Once that's completed, we will be able to deliver you 100 megawatts. Okay. So to your point, there's no battery that's storing 90 megawatts. So it can be as simple as plugging in, a mining machine or a mining equipment company or facility. There's a couple of steps that have to be done in order for that available power to be delivered and for it to be consumable power.
Right, because the
I'm trying to.
infrastructure again is like pretty monopolized and proprietary. So even if I had the 90 extra at the substation, I don't have the ability to deliver it. And if I
Correct.
did, they would charge me for it for the other 90, even though they're sending me 100 and I'm only getting 10. They would start then charging me for the additional 90, even
They're
though
only
I always
sending
had
you
it.
10. In
Right,
that
but
example,
100 gets
you're
there.
yes, right. So the only
It's
you're
not
only using
extra, but it
10.
is leftover. You can't
It's
call it
not leftover.
extra, right?
Well, we can't call it leftover either because we have to understand what the order is. Like, think about a bill. Like, what is the order? Like, one cheeseburger at McDonald's equals 10 megawatts, right? The order originally was one hamburger, 10 megawatts. Now one hamburger equals 10 megawatts, and now you want to scale up your operation to 100 megawatts. Well, you need 9 more hamburgers or 90 more megawatts. That needs to be generated or and delivered to that substation. They're not just going to say to you, okay, you have 100, like, because you can go out and buy 100 megawatt um, substation. You could go get one manufactured and buy it. Your problem is you need to come into that substation so you could kick it out to power your mining company and your mining machines, right? So that's where people don't understand is like, sure, the power needs to be scheduled, but they're not going to say, okay, you have 100 megawatt substation, we're going to deliver you 100 megawatts when you only need 10. They're going to say, no, you're going to get 10 and you're going to call us and we'll place in another order and the schedule will go out for the delivered power for the additional 90.
Mm. So why
Makes
aren't
sense?
these power producers just mining, having mining facilities at the substations or mining, themselves? It seems, to me that,
Yeah,
P&G and all these power companies around here are missing
sure.
a huge opportunity to produce their own income, and which in return, retrospect, would actually incentivize them to lower the costs for the residential and industrial costs. So we could actually see
So,
cheaper electricity if the electric companies mined fucking Bitcoin.
oh, and by the way, you can go pay your bill with Bitcoin. You can go pay it with whatever you want. Can you get those meetings? You make sure to call me. We'll get it done. Because listen, I'm just going to say this, and it's probably it could go somewhat viral. Hopefully it does. But explaining, Bit, let's just think about this. You're explaining Bitcoin, cryptocurrency mining to a 300-year-old person. Call it a company.
Yeah, I can see what you
or
mean.
a business, or a market. It's like, hey, market, you're 300 years old, you're incredibly smart, but you're only allowed to think outside the box when you're threatened by some type of federal or state legislation.
Well, I think their threat is
you
coming
know
from the individuals with the disruption of energy consumption coming from solar and other, personal means of
well,
production.
sure.
They might see some sort of competition individually, not so much legislatively. I don't even know if that's a word, but I think that when we do start to do this energy prohibition and people start producing their own
Mm-hmm.
energy and cutting the line saying fuck the energy companies are going to have to figure out another source of income, and Bitcoin mining is
Yep.
like a duh. It's almost like killing me
Well,
that
they
they
have all
don't do this
this.
themselves. They have everything they need except the miners.
Exactly. And so, you're taking, companies that are well established, been around for hundreds of years, incredible amount of assets. You would have to be in our seat that we sit today. You'd have to be foolish, right? The amount of information we know, the amount of overhead that they would have would be next to nothing to produce mining rewards from Bitcoin or any other of the shit coins out there. And so, so yeah, of course it makes sense, right? And that's what you're finding. You know, this is what's crazy. You know, it's not. It's easy to call a power producing company that you're producing electricity to say, hey, do you have any extra electricity that I can buy? Right? Sure, we do. Here's the price. There's a lot of steps into that process. That's where it gets whoa crazy. Lawyers, everything. Consultants like myself reviewing the strategy, all that business terms. Anyway, so then, okay, you have that aspect, but what needs to be disclosed is like, this is such a new thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin's 11 years old this year.
Yep, still a baby.
It's 11 years old, man. What
It's
were
not
you
even a
doing when you
baby.
were
Yeah, it's a
11?
fetus. I mean, no,
You know,
Bitcoin is, yeah.
what were we doing? When I was 11, I was playing RPGs with my buddy till 2 o'clock in the
Yeah, but I
morning.
mean, like,
And,
look at how old
you know,
Facebook is and how widely adopted it's become in its age. You know, things have this unexpectable exponential
that's
growth of
why
adoption.
that's why when you get guys like James Snowden or I'm sorry, Ed Snowden, geez, I'm sorry. I always call him James for whatever reason. It just sounds better. I don't know. Anyway, Ed Snowden at the conference, I mean, and that's what really hit me at the conference when they're saying things like Bitcoin is the next internet or the future internet. I mean, you know, I listen to and you and I listen to enough crazy people. And here's a funny thing. I actually met somebody and forgive me if you know this guy. I just thought it was absolutely weird. Kind of cool, but really strange.
I feel like I
Um,
already know.
yeah. I mean, well, he sells retail space exploration. He can send you to space for $250,000. And I met him at Bitcoin 2019, and I just thought. And meanwhile, I'm eating a burger at the bar, and the guy's telling me this with a buddy of mine. Shout out to Bill McDonald, um, one of my closest buddies now. I met him for the first time. Anyway, so we're sitting at this bar. He's telling us this story, and meanwhile, Bill and I are complete normal guys like yourself, just like, what the hell is this guy talking to us about?
Yeah, we're going to
And he's
space, man.
vaping. Listen, he's vaping in the middle of this guy's bar. He's asking for a drink, vaping in front of him, and the guy's like, "You have to be kidding me! This is highly illegal in San Francisco in a restaurant to be vaping in front of my face." Oh my gosh, so fun. Anyway, um, but they say statements like that, in Bitcoin 2019, like this is the next internet. It's like, dude, what? Are you serious? And I got my answer to that question, and I think there is no comparison, in my opinion. I think it's
Well, the
much
infrastructure we
more.
see built on top of the internet, that infrastructure that is the internet will then be placed on top of Bitcoin's blockchain. And potentially another layer of infrastructure will be built under that to keep building the support of the technologies on top of each other.
Yes, yeah, and that's where I think anybody that you know, after my thorough research, man, I love Bitcoin. It changed my view of how I view money and how my family views money. Um, I, I could say with somewhat of some actually pretty decent amount of confidence that my grandkids may not know or need to understand a paper dollar. I mean, they may not need to know that because of what influencers in this space are accomplishing today within the next 10 years. I feel like the next 10 years of Bitcoin and the advancement of the mining infrastructure and all of that, and education, behind this whole platform, man, it can literally change the financial bandwidth. I mean, you got central bank talking. Come on, man. I mean, it's coming. It's coming full force.
Let's get
You know.
into the potential centralization of Bitcoin, because I like to wear that hat as well. I don't like to just be the fanboy of Bitcoin and blockchain, sunshine and rainbows. We're going to see a lot
Agree.
of legislation and lobbying against this, and I think we could see regulation be implemented that could potentially prevent power companies from providing energy to Bitcoin miners that aren't government approved facilities. So I
Don't
think
tell me
that
that.
there is a way to centralize Bitcoin through the mining, through the regulation of the power being provided to those that want to be miners. So if you want to mine Bitcoin, you might have to be a federal or government regulated entity to produce Bitcoin, to be a miner in order to even accept the energy. So we may see some form of centralization in that aspect because of that potential. And that's why I'm really big on self
See
produced energy.
and see. Well, so I view that two in two ways. I view it as I'm going to view it as an anarchist way, and I'm going to view it as a compliant way, right? The anarchist way says you and I just spend $1 million and get the biggest, robust solar farm and battery, and we have our own compound, our house is completely electricity enabled 100% of the time. We have four, I don't know, whatever, four backup batteries that we had Tesla designed for us, blah, 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 whatever, right? That's the anarchist way to say, I'm going to mine, I'm going to create my own infrastructure, I'm going to create my own ecosystem to just say, I'm getting absolutely 100% off the grid, right? 100% off the grid. Now, the other side is the compliant way to say, you know what? Let's accept your regulation, right? We accept your regulation because for whatever reason, some health has frozen over, okay, and we have, you know, allowed um, um, we have allowed the transparency to be evolved into um, somewhat of acceptable mutual agreement between us and the utility company, right? And we say, okay, we got to go through all this federal regulation to prove that we're a viable business and we can purchase electricity, in this particular way. We're writing all this regulation and all of these rules and protocol to follow, blah blah blah. In that particular circumstance, Ken, I feel like it's kind of good, right? I mean, I don't dislike regulation. I dislike it when it's not mutually beneficial.
Well,
You
that's
know what I
how. I
mean?
mean,
To
that's
both
what
parties.
lobbyists are for, right? They
Right.
try to manipulate regulations to benefit at least one party. It's never a mutual beneficial scenario.
Yeah, but see, that's where I think
Look at vape
Bitcoin
pen
can either do.
regulation, man. Like that's big
Sure,
tobacco lobbying against their competitors. That,
of course, and but see, that's where Bitcoin has no friends there, right? Bitcoin doesn't have friends on one side or the other. It's either one way or you're not in. I mean, it's this is the rules. If you don't follow the rules, it's something else. It's not Bitcoin, right? Or just like any of these other coins. If you follow that set of rules, it's that set of whatever tokenized solution, smart contract, whatever reward you're looking to build in the blockchain analytic, application, that reward is produced, right? Um, but to again, regulation is okay. Bitcoin will be regulated. It requires to be regulated mutually and transparently. If not, then it's not Bitcoin. It's something else. Right?
right.
That's just my viewpoint. So
Yeah, my doggy's starting to get
that's
jealous of not getting
that's all right.
attention. Yeah, somebody said my
That's all
dog
right.
sounds asthmatic. No, I'm petting the small of her back and she's just loving it.
She's beautiful. Is it a pit or
Yeah, she's a pit bull. Her name is Nina. She's 4 years old.
awesome?
She's a good girl,
Sweet.
right, Nina? Good girl? Nina, good girl? Yeah. She was just, I think she just saw me sitting here not giving her any attention. It wasn't like thought
Yeah,
I was
she's not
doing
having
anything.
that.
She's like, what, you're just ignoring me? Just sitting down? She started
Yeah,
barking
not
at me.
having that.
You heard her barking at me earlier. She was like looking at me like, come on, pet me.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we wrap things up, I wanted to make sure we went over any topics or anything that you wanted to make sure we talked about that we didn't really get to cover.
Dude, this was awesome, man. I think we kind of, if people aren't just scratching their head like, can I learn more, understand more? I think I'm good, man. There's so much stuff. I'm really trying to again. So super crypto. I mean, Twitter newbie. I literally created a Twitter account like this past June. So if the shameless plug to help me out, we get some more visibility. You know what I mean? But at the Energy Guru 7. Um, anyway, there's so much stuff. Like my world, man, has become so inundated with data. And I mean, now I'm engaging with guys that have built data centers for some really reputable companies that we're advising on procurement strategies for. Procurement meaning, electricity and natural gas purchasing in the act of. And so it's just I am, you know, one of the things that really stuck with me that you said was that, in Vegas, when that all of that drama was hitting the fan, was that the space. Like, let me just make this comment: the space that we're in is so new. When we're trying to make it like really real, and one of the best spaces you can be in, and that's the boat that I'm in. You know what I mean? Whether it's Bitcoin or it's the shit coins or it's, blockchain or it's AI, VR, any of these spaces, right? Like when it comes to the energy guru, right? Like I'm in the cool bucket. Okay. Whatever is cool, I'm in. Okay. However, if you disrespect some of the foundational stuff like Bitcoin or Satoshi or some of the stuff that makes this space what it is, and the coolest stuff that attracted me and so many of my friends, my family, my 2-year-old. If you look at my Twitter, my 2-year-old knows what Bitcoin is. Okay. It's like we're attracted to this space because of the tech, because of the people. Some of the people are some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And so what got me into this space was that, right? When you got people talking all this smack, saying they're Satoshi and all this nonsense, dude, like to me, it's like saying like my Bitcoin doesn't, or I'm sorry, like my kid doesn't know what a Bitcoin is. Like, just stop right there. You need to just stop talking and recognize what you're doing. And that's what I felt when you were expressing yourself,
Yeah, I
expressing.
do gotta say, guys, this man was the first dude to jump to my aid when I was like
I
getting
got you.
riled up with that York Molt guy in Vegas, man.
I got you. I got you.
Much
I
appreciated.
got you.
So I guess to wrap things up, last question is: I see, yeah, you got to get going too, man. What's the roadmap for AmerexEnergy.com?
So, roadmap for Amerex is we are coming in this space purely unbiased, purely educational, and purely here to tell you we know what we're doing. We've been doing it for decades, and we're here to help this space grow and succeed with electricity and natural gas purchasing for data centers, not just cryptocurrency miner folks, but data centers in general.
I
So we're going to
definitely want to have
expand.
another podcast on data centers, man, because I people don't realize how important the backup of a blockchain really
Oh,
is, and the fact that you can't even download Ethereum blockchain and catch up right now. So like data centers with these blockchains, and especially with like auditing their transactional history. Oh, bro, don't even get me started. All right, guys,
yeah.
we're gonna wrap things up here. Definitely go and give my boy a follow here on Twitter. It's the Energy Guru 7. Check out the website. It's in the title. You can see it right there. Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, guys, like energy production, consumption, and distribution is like just one of the many branches we're all smacking going down this rabbit hole that is Bitcoin's blockchain. Like this rabbit hole has
Yes.
many layers of disruption, and it's all encompassing when it comes to the infrastructure of our legacy. So like if you look at, Bitcoin, you're going down that rabbit hole. Energy distribution, consumption, supply, it's part of it. So definitely try to get a basic understanding of that, again, because like I brought up earlier, like the centralization aspect of power production and mining, it's just one of those things that made me look more into energy and more into mining and stuff. So just
Yo,
dive
Ken,
deeper down that
one
rabbit
last
hole.
one last thing. I'll end on this. So the one of the things, Open Node. Shout out to Open Node. What got my name? I coined my name at Bitcoin 2019, the Energy Guru 7. What got me on the map was we were at this a Mexican bar in San Francisco. They did an elevator speech at the end, and I basically just posed the one question. I got up there, told them what I was. I said, "What is one thing Bitcoin can't live without?" And the answer to that question, and when you think about it, is electricity. Much love, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Much appreciated, bro. I'll see you at the next conference. Everybody, as always, have a day.
Peace.
Peace. Big shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, MonarchToken.io, the crypto solution available for iOS, Android, and desktop. Don't forget to check out the Divi Project, also sponsored the podcast, DiviProject.org, your one-click solution for masternodes and staking. I'm a shill.